I don't like Dead Hard. In other news, water is wet, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, and Elden Ring's launch has been somewhat successful. For as obvious as my dislike for Dead Hard is, I still feel the need to address it in an essay-style video. This perk has been in Dead by Daylight since July of 2017, and since that time, it's hardly been touched. Whereas some perks come in and out of the meta, Dead Hard has remained stubbornly present. High-level survivors are likely to bring some collection of Circle of Healing, Decisive Strike, Spine Chill, Prove Thyself, Unbreakable, or Iron Will, amongst a few others, but no matter which build they choose to go with, it's almost a certainty that Dead Hard will be a part of it. Even survivors going for less meta builds tend to bring Dead Hard, whether they're pairing the perk with Vigil, No Mither, or some other less powerful perk. To state it plainly, Dead Hard is near omnipresent in Dead by Daylight, and it's not likely to go anywhere anytime soon. But is this a bad thing? In my opinion, yes. Let's talk about it. First, before going any further, I want to address 2 points of bias. Neither of these points are world-changing in their nature, but I wanted to put them in plain sight so that nobody wanders over to my Twitch streams, sees something that surprises them, and returns to these comments feeling like I betrayed my core message. Bias number 1. I've spent most of my time in Dead by Daylight as an out and proud killer main. For the longest time, I thoroughly enjoyed playing the role of the hunter, the thrill of testing my mettle against P3 Claudettes, Sprint Burst Megs, and Neon Nias. As such, I developed a real and thorough dislike for Dead Hard over the course of my 5 or so years as a killer main. This experience must be noted, as it undoubtedly colored my perception of the perk. This also leads me to bias number 2. Now that I'm a survivor main, I often run Dead Hard. I realize that such an action may seem to contradict my entire argument, and rest assured, I struggled with first equipping the perk. In fact, it's almost embarrassing how long I struggled with the decision of whether or not to equip a perk in this buggy murder simulator. Surely, my time could have been better spent considering the works of René Descartes or the Greek Stoics. And yet, there I was, agonizing over whether or not to include Dead Hard into my Dead by Daylight builds. Millions of years of evolution, and there I was, a silly monkey using his silly monkey brain to make silly monkey decisions. Once I equipped Dead Hard, though, I never looked back. Immediately, the perk began to prove its usefulness. Whereas other meta perks only dramatically shift the game on occasion, it wasn't uncommon for Dead Hard to come up clutch multiple times in the same game. With the simple click of a button, I was able to extend loops a little longer, make it to one more jungle gem, and negate hits that may have otherwise swung the momentum of the game in the killer's favor. And with a base cooldown of only 40 seconds, Dead Hard was always ready to punish the killer again whenever they decided to begin another chase. To put it simply, Dead Hard's power is godly when compared to the other perks in the game. This is no one and done adrenaline or snuffable boon. No, this is something far stronger. Something that made my Survivor games far, far easier. This is, in many ways, the perk that made me start to feel like I wasn't so bad at Survivor after all. This was Dead Hard. It's around this part of the video that the title and thumbnail may start to seem a little at odds with the body of content to this point. If you hadn't seen the title, you may believe this video to be not a criticism of Dead Hard, but a love letter to it. Such an error would be understandable to this point, but believe me, the tone is about to change. You see, for as much fun as I've had using Dead Hard, the perk is still a problem. I mean, I enjoy using Noed too, but most would agree the perk is problematic in nature. To argue that all perks are perfectly balanced, or even somewhat balanced, would be ridiculous. Dead by Daylight is developed and run by Behavior Interactive. Behavior Interactive is staffed, unsurprisingly, by human beings. Human beings are, in their very nature, flawed and prone to mistakes. As such, human error has naturally made its way into Dead by Daylight, be it in the form of bugs, exploits, or some other abusable mistake. To state the obvious, employees at Behavior are not perfect. Nobody is. As such, it's rather silly to expect a game out of them, or any other studio, to be perfect. Now, this doesn't fully excuse gaming disasters such as the launches of Fallout 76 or Cyberpunk 2077, and it certainly doesn't absolve Behavior from the well-deserved criticism they've received over the years for their blasé attitude towards fixing DBD, or their hostility towards their own player base. But it does help to illustrate my point. Behavior has made a lot of mistakes, some more severe than others. Dead Hard, I believe, is one of those mistakes. To understand the errors in Dead Hard's design, I'd like to compare it to other meta perks. Let's start with the one-offs. Unbreakable, Decisive Strike, and Adrenaline are all exceptionally powerful, but because of their power, they can only be used once per game. And then there are perks like Borrowed Time and Iron Will, which are very strong, but can absolutely be played around by a skilled killer. Even when compared to other exhaustion perks, Dead Hard is the obvious king. There can be no argument against the fact that Dead Hard is far stronger and more reliable than Balanced Landing, Head On, Lithe, Overcome, and Smash Hit. Some have argued for the strength of Sprint Burst, and while the perk is extremely strong, it comes with obvious and meaningful drawbacks. Firstly, players using Sprint Burst have to choose between always walking around the map or closely managing their exhaustion meter. And while the perk does a great job of deterring chases, if a killer is to call the bluff of the survivor and follow them into whatever haven they run into, the survivor is now left without any exhaustion perks to bail them out. Sprint Burst is really strong, but I don't think it touches Dead Hard. One major difference between Sprint Burst and Dead Hard is that one challenges the killer's skill while the other negates it. Sprint Burst, more often than not, says, "You want me? Come get me." While Dead Hard says something more along the lines of, "You got me, well, no, actually, you didn't." And I think that best explains the crux of the issue when it comes to Dead Hard. The perk, by its very nature, rewards poor play and punishes good plays from the other side. A survivor doesn't use Dead Hard when the killer messes up and makes the wrong read. They don't use it when the Nurse Blink was way off the mark or when the Huntress Hatchet was never going to hit anyway. No, survivors are supposed to use Dead Hard when they're in trouble and they've made a mistake. In its very essence, Dead Hard is designed to rob killers of well-deserved hits or downs. It's supposed to say, "Hey, killer, that thing you just did? Yeah, do it again." And make no mistake, getting burned by Dead Hard never feels good. In many ways, Dead Hard is to survivors what NOED is to killers, if not considerably stronger. Some have compared Adrenaline to NOED, but this comparison is faulty, I believe. Survivors have to earn Adrenaline through the completion of 5 generators. NOED, meanwhile, can be triggered by sitting around and doing literally nothing, just like Dead Hard. While losing isn't fun, it's part of competitive gaming, and Dead by Daylight is competitive, if not in the way gamers traditionally use that term. Usually, to say a game is competitive is to refer to a style of gaming in which teams or individuals of equal standing battle it out to see who can reign supreme. Because of Dead by Daylight's asymmetrical formula, true competitiveness can never truly be achieved. One side will always be stronger than the other. However, if we take the dictionary definition of competitive, which describes the term as relating to or characterized by competition, Dead by Daylight is certainly competitive. Killers and survivors are competing to see who can defeat the other one. As such, losing the competition because the other side has stronger perks at their disposal is a brutal proposition. This feeling is one reason why very few would respect the results of a tournament in a pay-to-win game. Does it really matter if you had better champions in a game like Raid, Shadow Legends, or AFK Arena? Is it really something to brag about if you've spent hundreds of dollars on your Madden Ultimate team? Nobody respects superiority in the games I just mentioned because said superiority isn't earned, it's bought. Now, because I know some of you may be tempted to twist my words, let me be clear. I am in no way equating the use of Dead Hard and Dead by Daylight to dropping an entire month's salary on card packs in FIFA. The latter is certainly worse and less respectable than the former. That being said, the feelings associated with losing to overpowered perks are not entirely dissimilar to those of losing to overpowered pay pigs. The raw feeling of unfairness persists all the same, and leads players down a road of bitterness, anger, and, in more cases than not, losing interest in the game they once cherished. Dead Hard is not to blame for DBD's plummeting player count. Dead Hard is not to blame for the fact that the game has lost more players than it has gained in 6 of the last 7 months. DBD's struggles are not Dead Hard's fault. Or, at least, not entirely. It's no secret that the rift between the killer and survivor communities has only grown wider over the years. While anecdotal, my personal experience spent with content creators and players from both sides of the spectrum have seemed to reveal more and more aggressive behavior as the years have gone on. Both sides seem fairly convinced that the other side is grossly overpowered, and to some extent, both sides are right. When played to absolute efficiency, both sides can be extremely oppressive. And in all reality, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the fact that sometimes I'm going to run into a 4-stack bully squad determined to make my day a little worse. I'm okay with the fact that sometimes I'm going to face a god-tier nurse that offers me, an average player, no real chance of survival. Those outliers don't concern me because they're just that, outliers. What concerns me is not the cracked 1 in 1,000 player that can dominate me 7 ways to Sunday and never break a sweat. What concerns me are perks like Dead Hard that take players of all skill sets and make them far more viable. There's an old saying that a rising tide lifts all boats. In this case, Dead Hard is the tide, and the survivors are the boats. Killers, for the sake of this analogy, may as well be sharks. Starving, forgotten sharks. In its current state, Dead Hard takes almost no skill to use well. Sure, if you hover around low MMR, you'll find a lot of beginners who aren't quite sure how to use the perk, and sure, even experienced players will occasionally misclick and Dead Hard into the nearest wall. But those players aren't the issue. The issue is the below average to pretty good players who use this perk to make life far harder for killers of similar skill. Even DH's counterpart, Noed, can't compete in terms of value. Noed is boom or bust, while Dead Hard is nearly assured value. Noed can only activate at the end of a game, and can be prevented entirely if the survivors cleanse bones. Dead Hard is always a threat, and is completely unpreventable unless playing an insta-down killer. If I haven't convinced you of Dead Hard's issues yet, I likely won't. Some people disagree, and that's perfectly fine. If you'd like to make a case for Dead Hard, please head to the comments below and sound off. I'm excited, if somewhat apprehensive, to hear what you guys have to say. The point of this video is for me to plead my case and also to hopefully start a dialogue. If people are discussing Dead Hard and its merits in the comments, I'm happy with the result of this video. All of that to say, this video isn't quite over yet. I hate to be the type of creator that offers criticism, but not advice. Saying that something is broken is far less valuable than offering to fix it. So, how would I fix Dead Hard? That's easy. Just take out the invincibility frames from the perk. As it currently stands, Dead Hard offers both a speed boost and momentary invincibility. The issue there, I feel, is that the speed boost is already really strong by itself. Even if the invincibility aspect of the perk were removed, you'd still see Dead Hard in most high meta builds. The ability to make up for lost ground and potentially keep a loop going is massive, and would ensure that Dead Hard remains an S tier perk. Without invincibility though, survivors would have to play a little smarter, and skilled killers would be rewarded for their efforts. Taking out the iframes would reward good nurses, huntresses, trappers, and more. This change would take the perk from being godly in nature to simply being really, really good. There would still be issues with the perk, namely the hit validation issues that have long plagued it, but those aren't related to balance and are instead related to performance. It's not helpful just to say, hey, behavior, make Dead Hard work. I also don't want a longer cooldown for Dead Hard, because I think that's too harsh of a nerf. Exhaustion perks are at their best when they can hypothetically be used once per chase, adrenaline excluded. This isn't always the case, obviously, but more often than not, there will be 40 seconds between your first and second chases, so I don't want to see any exhaustion perks get slapped with a longer cooldown. As a sign of good faith, I'd even be okay with adding a small distance buff to Dead Hard to make up for its loss of invincibility. This isn't necessary, mind you, but if that's what it takes to rework Dead Hard, and not upset the survivor community too much, I'm okay with it. The key here would be to keep the buff rather small. But that's gonna do it for me. I'm done complaining about a random perk in a goofy slasher game. Now, as I stated before, I want to hear what you have to say. Comment below whether or not you think Dead Hard is too strong. If I were to do another video dissecting a perk like this, which perk would you like to see me cover? Please do make sure you like this video if you enjoyed it or found it informative. Viewer engagement really helps with the algorithm, and I'm really hoping to hit 5,000 foodies by the end of the week. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are, and until next time, bye friends.